The ARC World Tour finals are coming up, so I figured now would be a good time to take a look at where the cast is in Guilty Gear Strive Season 4. Now, unlike previous years of AWT, we haven't had a mid-season patch before the finals, so I wanted to make this before a potential announcement. And in this video, I want to not just talk about how I feel about how the characters rank up against each other, but also about the general balance of the game. So stick around for the end of the video for that. Now, before we go into the actual tier list, I want to talk about the tiers in general. So for a while now, I stopped using letters and instead I set up my rankings based on how well I think that character can do in a very large scale event alone. Think of something like an Evo or a combo breaker or a CEO. For my European friends, maybe something like UFA or VSF. So with that in mind, here is the list. First, I did something I don't normally do, and I actually split the winning tier into two. Usually I have like a top tier that's like winning, but I think there's so many characters that could win a solo event in season 4 that I looked at which characters I think stood out amongst that group, and that is that lovingly named Elite 4. So just keep in mind that the top 2 tiers are characters that I think can solo win events. The next thing you might notice is that compared to prior tier lists I've made, I have cut the bottom tier again. So in season 2, I thought the weakest characters were really good in their strong situations but had notable flaws that made it difficult to use them, or they were really only good against like 1 or 2 characters, so they kind of had a niche spot in the meta. In season 3, the power level was brought up some, but I thought the weakest characters in that game were power crept. So like, not that they were weak per se, it was just that characters did stuff that they did but better, or again, they were only good against 1 or 2 characters, so they had a niche spot in the meta. So this season, my lowest tier is one that you'd be pretty familiar with if you watched my previous tier list of this game, the Bracket Ruiner tier list. So what this is saying is that I don't really think there's a character with a flaw. Like, such a major flaw that like they just like can't perform at all. So these characters have disadvantageous matchups for sure, but they are essentially pretty decent characters. And these are characters that can ruin your day if you're not ready for them. And unlike previous tier lists I've made, this is probably the smallest, or tied for the smallest, that this tier has ever been. By far, the largest group of characters in this patch are the top 8 characters. So honestly, depending on the day, I split these up into 2 groups sometimes, but I thought it was better to group them all together just to show how I feel about both the balance and the power level of the game at the moment. Also, in my opinion, the ideal power level for a character in this game is about here. All these characters are quite good, they're quite unique, and they have flaws that you can play around in an interesting way. And the most important part is that generally you can overcome these flaws with either something in their kit or with just skill. So with that, let's start the list. And we need to start with Aba. So I know I talked about each of the other ranks. So Aba is in a unique position because of what you can do with the character. I'm not saying that she's the worst character in the game. I just think she exists in a position kind of outside the rest of the cast. Aba is what you would describe as a feast or famine character. Her unique mechanic, the Jealous Rage gauge, a little weird to say, that little bar above her meter, enables her to power up a lot. She goes from having below average movement and big attacks, but with some recovery, to having top class neutral, offensive mix-ups, and defense. In normal mode, one of her main standout points is actually her fast 2P that she can convert into a knockdown that gives her Jealous Rage meter. Now, Jealousy Rage is incredibly strong, but it does have a pretty big flaw, and that's that you can't regain it passively. So the main ways she actually builds the meter is by hitting you, or using this command parry, which is not frame 1, so the timing can be a little tough. So if a character can play around the timer and keep her from regaining it, she's pretty much stuck. Now the big thing about her is that almost every single high performing tournament Aba plays her as a counter pick character, not their main. And if you play her into a winning matchup, you feel basically unstoppable. I made a video at I want to say around September last year about my experience playing Aba in tournament, and by around Evo Las Vegas, when I played her in tournament, I had great success for the matchups I wanted to play her in. She has high health, high damage, and plenty of opportunities to reverse defense into a win. But if you play her into a losing matchup, you'll feel worthless. Jealous Rage feels like a coin flip, and the opponent feels nigh unreachable. For this reason, I decided to have her kind of alone in her own spot, since how someone decides to use her will greatly affect how they'll feel about her as a character. So really the first character we're going to talk about on this list is actually Dizzy. So Dizzy is a set play zoner that can play at a variety of ranges, between her fish summons, projectiles, and more unique zoning moves like her Ice Spike and Michael Sword. She can also change the field a la Yu-Gi-Oh! By following up with an ice field, which does change it to some platformer style mechanics with the screen being slippery. And this move can open up both new conversions and punishes. Finally, she has this move, Wings of Light, which has a long startup activation time. However, after about 10 seconds, it will activate and trade meter for unblockable damage. This can be quite strong and makes strike throw way scarier in the opportunities that you actually have to do it. So I actually think her main problem is she doesn't really stand out in any regard. There are characters with better set play than her. There are characters that both zone better than she does and that don't really care about her setting up. I do think she has some unique defense with her ice move, and having this does give her extra conversions, but the opponent could use it in their favor as well. On top of that, when Dizzy is doing extensions of the ice, she actually gives opponents a lot of meter, and this is a very big factor in a game about meter. So next we have Axel. Axel zones with normal attacks, and he's pretty unique in that he can play in a lot of ranges with his normals, despite him suggesting that you should run away. From a distance, he has his projectile canceling attack Rensen, along with very strong poach successes 2P, 5P, R slash, 2H, and ID back jump S. From closer ranges, his kicks, especially his low profile to very fast 2K, is quite good, along with his retreating plus unblock special move Rainwater, and the aforementioned ID back jump S. So previously this character struggled with cancel options, but he got his tornado move to help out with this, keeping him safe in mid-range and also helping out with meter build. This move is not infallible, however, but it is a pretty good move. So I think, like Abba, he's kind of polarizing as well, but unlike Abba, Axel is not that popular, so people who play him tend to main him. Characters that are fast tend to do well into him, and while he's good at building meter by conditioning characters, he's not good at actually opening people up. So he kind of relies on characters running into stuff. He does well into two-step characters in particular, but usually once these characters get started, there's not that much he can do about it. Finally, he has low HP, which right now is not a good thing in the game. So Bedman is another set play zoning style character, and again, he can play a variety of ranges. So his main mechanic is that after doing special moves, after a certain amount of time, they will activate automatically. This leads to unique neutral and offensive situations. He also has a 8-way dash, and previous buffs helped with conversion ability, especially with his JS vacuuming, and his ability to catch backdashes on air hit with moves like Far Slash. He got a huge HP buff in Season 4, so he's way more tanky than he used to be. And because of this HP, it is likely that he'll get 50 meter even if he's losing for getting hit. And he has good use for the meter like White Waddle Soap Red RC, which still has the invincibility, or his install super, which powers up his special moves so that they're super and are far more advantageous than usual. Finally, this character is just hard to backdash in general because of his moves having so many active frames. That being said though, I do think he's the weakest high HP character. So one of his problems is that he's just way too big. So he just has to deal with stuff that people kind of throw at him. He does have a heavy backdash, which is pretty easy to react to. So even though he has more invincibility, you are generally plus if not hating him when he backdashes. He has a notably so reversal super, but it being so means that he has a decent super PRC option. There are a lot of gaps to this pressure as well. So if your character has good reversals, then it could be hard for him to establish pressure and he has to RPS quite a bit. Finally, while he does have unique movement compared to other characters, his size can make it just hard to do these things in general, which can make it hard for him to get started. And finally, the last character in the bracket ruiner tier is Zato. Zato was considered to be pretty strong early in the game through Season 2, but in Season 3 he received major nerfs out of nowhere. Now, Zato fights with his shadow, Eddie, and you can use the shadow both for neutral and for offense. Zato's mix-ups are very good and are usually layered. He usually gets multiple mix-ups in a sequence, so multiple high-lows in the corner, and high-low plus left-right options in mid-screen. Zato can also reliably combo off of his throw, which is very strong, and some of the ones he got were very helpful. Previously, this combo would just drop sometimes. Another big change is just how fast Eddie moves across the screen in general. A big complaint previously was how good system mechanics like burst and YRC were against Eddie. So the developers changed how Eddie recovers so that depending on when he dies, he starts recovering from there. As in, you would have to wait longer to use a system mechanic on defense, or have Zato straight up kill Eddie before doing something to actually see the total duration of Eddie's recovery. Another big change they made was the command grab totally refunding the Eddie meter. So normally, in previous versions, doing it basically gave it back, but it was because the Eddie gauge was so short. So now that it's longer, they made it so that you just get him back right away. While you got these changes and more, I think he still has the same overall weaknesses. The nerfs to his jabs still hurt, especially because it's pretty hard for him to convert them. And his HP is low, so it's unlikely that he will get hit and get 50 meter that he can use in neutral or offense. And even with the speed buff to Eddie, there are various ways that you can kill Eddie, and the cast is pretty good at killing the shadow. So basically, despite the buffs that he got, characters maintain their advantages into him. So it might feel better to play him straight up as a character, but he might not feel better to play into other characters. And next we move into the biggest tier, the top 8 tier. So first we have Asuka, who is a set play zoner, but he's this game's resident magic user, which I guess I shouldn't consider to be a standard thing in a fighting game, but there's a couple of these in Arc System Works games. So if you look above his beater, he has 4 slots plus his extra bar and a crescent moon with a number on it. So essentially this character has 3 decks of spells that he uses like cards, and he could do spells into other special moves to both recover a spell and regain resource. The default one's focused on neutral control, while the second test case is focused on more unique offense, while the third test case is focused on unique special effects, let's say. You can use his very fast meter gain to get access to his bookmark super that lets him change not only the spells to find the one he wants, but he actually has the ability to switch decks first and then look for what he wants to create really unique situations. He has a best-in-class burst due to the nature of his spells, and he could easily establish the pace of the match once he gets things under control. Now, there is an aspect of randomness because he gets a random hand each time a round starts, but outside of that, he can route into things that he wants to have a predictable flow. But this character has a couple of problems. So for starters, Asuka the character is actually not that great. Like, he doesn't have super good buttons, and a lot of things actually have quite a bit of recovery. One of his best normals is this 2D, and this move has a ton of recovery. Various normals he has gaps, his backdash is slightly slower than average, and he has a meterless reversal in this DP, but it's tied to a spell card. It's pretty rare. It is not that strong. Now, he does have the most HP when he has the barrier, but if for some reason this barrier breaks, he has by far the least. Also keep in mind that his fastest mana recovery is with HP, so he does spend his own HP to get mana back. And he recently received another round of nerfs. So for example, not having access to his level 5 fire cube. Now he has to wait for it to level up before he gets access to more, rather than having it instantly. That being said, I do think his meter gain, amazing burst, and general control of the match keep him out of bracket ruiner tier. Now, Testament is another zoner, probably the most pure zoner for what people would have as a concept, as they generally use projectiles to control space. So Testament's match flow goes like this. You throw a projectile somehow, and then this succubus is on the screen. And then if you get the opponent to block this crow, then the opponent is in a state called stain, and everything you do will call this pop. But when the opponent is in stain, on hit, things pop up and you could lead into a big combo. When the succubus is on screen too, the crow both has tracking, or you can hold the P button so that it goes just straight across the screen, leading to some guessing games in neutral. And Testament is good at neutral. The character has a best-in-class anti-air, a fast backdash with good invincibility, a low profile 2K, and normals that hit a variety of ranges like far slash, 2H, plus fireballs. The character's general match flow of special move into pop, into special move, into crow over and over builds his character a good amount of meter at a good pace, especially if the opponent doesn't know what to do. And the stain being a longer total duration helps Testament loop pressure and threaten neutral easier. So for the most part, I think Testament has 2 big problems. So first comes from the speed of their game plan. The game plan can be predictable because it revolves around this succubus, and because of this, opponents can really try to make things hard for Testament so that this part of the game plan does not get set up, because the threat of stain does not exist until this is on screen. On defense, I do find also that Testament can have problems reversing situations. The 2K is great, but it's 6, and the backdash is good as well, but especially when the character is in the corner, it could be a pretty risky option. But outside of these two things, I find Testament to be quite well-rounded this patch. So next we have Millia. And Millia is a high-speed character, classified as a rushdown character, but she's really focused on knockdown mix-ups. She's easily one of both the fastest characters in the game and the most mobile. If you want to know the difference, her run speed is good and she could travel through the air quickly, but also she has moves that change her trajectory, so moves like Turbo Fall and Capel. Millia can act out her air dash faster than any other character in the game, which can lead to mid-range being pretty difficult to play against. Capel is actually nerfed in season 4.0, so in the emergency patch they made it so she could act quickly out of this, letting her do jump H, which she previously could not. She has a simple but strong mix-up of her 2K2D, and with meter, she has the potential to mix you up multiple times with Bedman. Her defense is also uniquely good in that she has a mashing 4-frame like Abba, with less return, but she also has both an invisible backdash, truly, and a higher jump compared to other characters, making her hard to pin down on defense. So for weaknesses, one is pretty clearly HP. In the previous patch, she actually had the lowest non-Asuka HP. Right now, she has the second lowest, which she usually has in Guilty Gear, so it's normal for her. But she also has other small system-based weaknesses, like building risk faster compared to other characters. System mechanics like Deflect Shield can weaken some of her offensive situations, which is rough because her offense is not that great compared to other fast characters. So she's supposed to have it in exchange for the strong knockdown. So since there are ways to mitigate both, I think she kind of struggles until she gets meter or breaks the wall. So Kai has been all over the tier list, and he is the definition of an all-around character. He's fast, but not too fast. He has good range, not the best. He has a good projectile and stun edge, but there are definitely better projectiles in the game. And he has a meter as DP, but it's slower and doesn't travel very far. Things like charge stun edge and his BD5K are good Oki, but there's better in the game. So to make him stand out more, the devs decided to buff Shock State. But unlike Testament, they did not up the duration of this status, as it buffs his neutral presence, his mix-ups, and his conversions. In exchange though, he did get nerfs to moves like 6H, which is far more punchable than it used to be. Keep in mind that Baiken's 5H is not a fast attack by any means. And he also got a nerf to Fudorak, making it not convert as well. So I basically think Kai is in this rank because he's just less flexible than he used to be. They were really trying to shoehorn him into Shock State, and the nerfs to his hits off standard conversions means that his damage is down without resource or getting Shock State first. He also has to be somewhat more committal on offense because he has more endpoints that are more disadvantageous, so he has to cancel more or use resources like Wild Assault. But outside of this, I find him to still be a strong character. So Faust has generally been considered to be one of the weaker characters in the game, despite always getting buffs. So he is an item throw character, so he can toss items out at random, and he uses items to support him in neutral, offense, and most frustratingly, defense, as items do not go away on hit. Now, the item throw is actually quite slow compared to other Arxis games, but in exchange, there's no limit to how many times he could do it, which can lead to some pretty cursed situations. On top of that, he surprisingly has unique movement. He has one of the best black walk speeds in the game, a crawl that goes under many characters' strong pokes, top class anti-air in 5k, 6p, and 2s. He jumps extremely high with a unique steerable air dash, and he himself is decently fast. He also has long range pokes like Far Slash and 2H, as well as things like his 6H and the Scalpel Pull. He also has a slow super. This just means he has a big window for super PRC. And speaking of meter, he does also have really good applications for meter. Between high lows with Tornado, he can use a Scarecrow for left right and strike through, and he could use the meter to protect himself in case he whiffs his powerful command grab. Faust is pretty unique in that he could beat characters from neutral with items and with his command grab, giving him many ways to find a win. But he is not without flaws still. Fast characters are tough because he can't recklessly whiff his big buttons, but also his backwalk won't do much to them since they can keep up. Basically everything he does is disadvantageous, so when he's at a long range it's fine because he's far away, but when he's in close range it could be quite risky, especially with even with new cancel options like his hole-in-one. This move, while comboing on crouching or counter hits, the hole-in-one itself is very punishable. The nerf to his dive makes you feel this even more. He also has poor guts. This is a stat that applies to the character's entire life bar, but you really start feeling it near the end of the life bar, and this stat combines with a character's defensive modifier to create an effective HP amount. And because Faust has the lowest guts rating, he dies from combos that other characters would not earlier. You get the other extreme. Anji will not die from this because he is eternal. The character has simple ways of stopping him in neutral between like crawl and walk back. You can have problems controlling his ideal range. Slayer is a powerhouse of a character. He's one of the only characters in the game that has a move that just straight up wall splats you. Does a ton of damage even with simple combo routing. Has good normals in buttons like far slash, 2D, and if it can reach, 2H. Can threaten characters at ranges with Mappa Hunch, especially if you can car cancel it. He uses spacing plus varied offense to catch people off guard into high reward. On top of that, he has a command grab that turns all hits into a large counter hit that leads into big combos. So for weaknesses, I'd say Slayer probably has a couple, and these have facilitated in his drop from basically being a top tier. So for starters, he was on the very high end of HP when he dropped, but his HP got nerfed in this patch, so he's not as tanky as he used to be. The other one comes from how linear he is in neutral. He does not have his old BDC technique to make his various special moves invincible, and he has one of the slowest backdashes in the game, and he's only invincible when he's off screen, which makes his backdash kind of hard to use. Now Mappa Punch does travel a long distance, but he is lunging himself at you, so if you have ways of attacking from far or attacking in the air from a distance, you can keep him out pretty easily. He also can't really change how he moves in the air, so even though his dash jump is good, if you can control space in front of you well, it could be hard for him to approach. Finally, moves that he would use at certain ranges with high return, like his 2H, now have a ton of recovery, making it much more risky to whiff. Now Ino is another mix-up character, so like Millia, she has unique movement, but in a very different way. So she has this hover dash reminiscent of Morgan from Darkstalkers. And since this character can't run in traditional sense, she has a lot of moves that lunge at you, like Stroke the Big Tree and MLA. Stroke the Big Tree, for example, is a fast-traveling, low-profile move, while MLA is pretty good at going over lows, on top of being an advantageous guard crush. Now also, because her dash is the Morgan dash, her approach is kind of a built-in 50-50, and plus as well, so she's able to do a lot of varied offense to you from all sorts of situations. Now normally, a character like this, you would say her problem is that her pressure is interactive, but her conversion ability has been significantly improved in Season 3 and 4, which I think balances this aspect quite well. This also helps stabilize her game plan because she gets more access to positive, which makes her a little bit more reliable and makes all her special moves better because of the threat of RC and getting reward that she did not have previously. Ino is on the lower end of HP, so she does go down fast, and her inability to run translates to having an inability to reposition herself easily. Her walk speed is not very good, so she either has to jump, use a special move, or simply wait for the opponent at times. Now, she does have amazing normals like 2S, far slash, 2H, and a top class 6P to help out with these things, but again, she has to deal with things in a pretty direct manner. If a character can deal with her special moves well from a safe range, she tends to have to force her way in, which can be a bit unreliable. JackO is a set play and zoning character. She summons minions that she could use to control neutral, for offense, and even for defense. She can pick up minions, throw them at you, hit them in various ways, and she can power them up in two ways. She can do a defense buff where they don't go away if you hit them and if she gets hit, unless you do a super. Or she can use an offensive super that makes her gauge recover incredibly quickly. Her minion summon is fast, which gives her a top tier burst situation, and could even result in her using the minion against some other character's burst. Because pulling minions are considered to be a special move, and she has a lot of actions she uses that are called special moves, and she is able to maintain advantage pretty easily, she builds meter incredibly quickly, which can lead to very one-sided rounds. Defensively, she is like Testament, where she has a strong low profile 2k, and the good fast backdash. So her main weaknesses are like some previous characters we've mentioned. She has low HP, and she used to have a top class risk gauge, but now she has one like Millia's. She also is pretty bad at escaping the corner. Her dash jump is not very good, and a lot of attacks she uses to fight back involve lunging herself at you, like 5H or 2D. On top of that, if she doesn't have space to set up minions, actually pulling them out could be quite a risk, and it could be a pretty rough situation for her. So Elphelt is a neutral and rushdown character. So she has a Rekka, this move, that has both high and low options. And once you do the high or the low, you could either reset the situation or do another high or low. Or you can choose to exit safely, making blocking her from 99 seconds quite a threat. She's fast with big pokes and a full screen projectile with some light tracking. In the case someone outranges her on the ground, she does have this grenade move that clears basically all ground pokes. And on block, it can lead into a mix-up. In Season 4, she got Orange Wild Assault to aid with conversions. And as a second win condition, she has this bomb vest that she can do that she can shoot with various projectiles. So for example here, I'm going to use like the grenade, it's going to pop the bomb vest and she can keep going. Now, normally I would not say a character's issue is how interactive their pressure is, but I think Elphelt is a unique case because it seems that most of the matchups she doesn't like involves characters having reversals. There are a ton of points in our offense that have gaps that you can respond to, including when she tries to bait you various ways. She also really aims to make contact with opponents, as her normals are quite vulnerable on whiff. So Bridget is a neutral, rushdown, and set play character, and honestly she's pretty well rounded. She has big normals, fast backdash, good defense with a 5-frame 2k and a DP, plus the backdash, good mix-ups, and mobility plus screen control with her yo-yo mine and roll. The character is simple enough, has a couple of flaws. So for starters, her roll has a massive hurt box. This is B hitting the roll from very far. And this is to compensate for the steering they gave to her in this patch. Her HP is kind of low, but she also didn't get like damage buffs compared to other characters. So not only does she die fast, but she also has to hit characters a lot of times since many characters got HP increases. Surprisingly, you can pin her in the corner too, because without the yo-yo, her movement is pretty linear. Now Giovanna is a neutral and rushdown focused character, and her rushdown is focused on block string offense. Now this character has a unique step dash that she can cancel whenever she wants, and it's very fast and travels a long distance. And in Season 4, when she has both 50 meter and 100 meter, she gets even faster, along with her previous buffs to her defense, HP, and chip damage. She's the best pure with Punisher, and her fast dash, combined with her fast attacks, can make it hard to defend her strike throw game. When she has 50 meter, she has various mix-ups she can do to open you up. On defense, she has a fast standing jab, but it's pretty small. But she does have a long horizontal super, and a surprisingly good backdash. Now to be honest, if this character has a weakness, it's probably about how she plays neutral because she has to send herself at you. So you can try to control space around that. But honestly, I think she's the defining, oh, I just go even against everyone character. You can make an argument on how she's not super good at doing mix-ups until she gets 50 meter, which makes her game plan a little slow. But even from that perspective, I don't think it's that big of a deal because you're generally not blocking Geo until she whiff punishes something or just runs in at you. So she is gaining meter from that. Baiken is an all-rounder type character, leaning a bit more into mix-up and defense. She has some great buttons like her top class far slash and her very large jump S, defense and neutral with H Kawadi and the aforementioned jump S, and the instant air dash back to Tommy. She has extremely powerful mix-ups off throw, and with meter, she is decent at boxing offense, though her mix-up potential goes up a lot with the threat of her instant overhead. Now the thing that ties together this game plan is tether, and this move makes it so characters can no longer escape from Baiken, but in exchange, characters usually have some unique conversion that they can do against Baiken in tether. In Season 4, they buffed her defense to compensate for the last patch of Season 3, where they basically ignored her and nerfed her again. Her parry has a much larger window than previously, and if you parry someone from a distance, you're able to dash cancel into a guard crush into a mix-up. Also, when you parry air opponents from a distance, they don't get sent back in full screen. You're able to continue your offense, and you can parry out of block stun with good timing. The vacuum buff to tether makes it so that no matter what, you get a predictable situation off the move. Unlike variable situations where you could be really spaced out and have the opponent have the advantage even when you apply what you want. Now, she has a few weaknesses though, so one, she has a uniquely bad burst situation. She just doesn't have any moves that like threaten any character when she bursts, so even though you get a knockdown, a lot of people are not scared of getting bursted by this character. Her guard cancel cannot be used against guard crush, and you might be like, well, okay, you used a super to show this, but you can guard cancel supers. Basically, if a character can do a guard crush, she kind of has to hold the following mix-up. She used to really struggle at comboing against characters that are standing on normal hit, but a change to 5H made this much easier, along with a change to far slash having less pushback, but there are still conversion problems around this move, along with some buttons just being hard to convert off of in general, like her 2S. Other conversion tidbits would be things like her jab not converting consistently, JD being extremely hard to convert without meter, or counter hit. One small conversion note is, unlike Bedman, she does have the active frames to convert off her far slash, but it still knocks opponents away. So there are characters like Bedman and Soul who got these changes where Baiken still does not. So in the next group of characters, I'm going to start with Soul. And as a reminder, from here on out, these are all characters that I think can win tournaments solo. So Soul is supposed to be an all-rounder type, but I do think he focuses on like very tight mid-range neutral and rushdown. He has some unique ways of moving around the screen, like Bend and Bringer, and a change to Fafnir gives him a new save cancel ender. Like Slayer, he has a guaranteed wall splat in Age Volcanic Viper, and in mid-range he can make himself plus with Far Slash. Once he gets to meter, the threat of Bandit Revolver mix-ups help him close rounds, similar to a character like Geo. He does have a couple of weaknesses though, so for starters, he is noticeably stubby. He has many fast moves, but a lot of them don't have a lot of range. Far Slash typically is a character's main poke, but while Soul's is fast and plus, it's notably is not disjointed and it just goes into attacks. If he's not in, he's not like in. Like Baiken, he's not very fast. So characters can attempt to keep a position where it could be hard for him to approach, and he usually has to overextend. Soul's actually amazing at converting. If the person playing him is not good at converting single hits, then you'll definitely feel like his knockdowns are not as rewarding because you're not cashing out as often as you can. Now Mei is a neutral and rushdown focused character, so she's a simple character at a glance. Her trademark move is this dolphin move that got memed to death when the game came out, but she's a tricky character now with a lot of control of the screen. So some of her normals were nerfed, like 5k being slower, which does matter for things like round start, but there are other normals like her far slash that has less recovery, which makes it arguably better. Her damage output is higher than before, thanks to previous combo changes and damage changes. Her pressure is pretty safe. Standout normals would be things like her close slash and her 5k, and she's able to set up a favorable distance and make it hard for opponents to escape. She has one of the best command grabs in the game with Overhead Kiss, a combo command grab that is very difficult to burst. And it makes it so that both her throw and her strike have similar return. Even if you say the damage is not the same, the main point is that she could break the wall and build meter and route towards victory. They have further made her neutral good in that she already had the good normals and the fast backdash and the uniquely high but fast falling jump with deep air normals, but she could also steer her dolphin, making it so she could attack from a variety of ranges or just come straight at you. Her defense is also uniquely good, so not just the backdash that we mentioned, but also jabs and her Orca super, which when you have 100 meter leads into strong mix-ups. And to be honest, I don't think Mei has any major flaws. You can say things like, oh well, her conversion ability is not good if she doesn't get counter hits, but there's Water Assault now, and you start with 2 stocked. You can also say approaching characters that are good at zoning or have big normals could be tough, but between her top class buttons, her great jump, and again, using Dolphin to bait people, she could maneuver her way around what characters do. This last thing is a small note, but because of the way her heavy buttons are, she isn't as good at stringing things like 3 hits or more hits compared to other characters, so she doesn't actually build meter as quickly as other rushdown characters in this way, but again, she's usually doing small, short ticks that are hard to react to, plus keeping it in an advantageous position, so again, I think this thing doesn't matter too much. Now, Chipp is another speedster type, but he is fast, but linear, is what I would say last year, but now they gave him this move, the tightrope. This move gives him access to his wall run normals, anywhere on the screen as long as he mounts the rope. He has both explosive speed and fast normals, making it nearly impossible to pin him down. He pretty much dictates the pace of neutral. Unlike many characters who rely on physical attacks for offense, he actually builds meter pretty quickly because of how his offense is structured. There's a lot of points where you can guess on his offense, but what to do can be pretty ambiguous, and if you don't pick something, he's going to keep building meter over and over. He has good left-right mix-ups both alone or with the tightrope run. His defense is also pretty good. He has a normal backdash, but it travels a very long distance, fast normals and jab, and he has ADP. Like Millia, he can act out his air dash faster than other characters, and he has 3 jumps, in addition to the tightrope adding to his mobility. As for weaknesses, an obvious one would be HP. He has the lowest outside of Asuka, but he's so strong that if he had more HP, he'd be the best character. He also is like so that he does not have a disjointed far slash. He really does not like doing moves that he can't react to easily, or are low profiles. His Rekka is no longer a medium counter hit, so guessing here is not a bad idea, but the tightrope solves this problem. He honestly just doesn't have a lot of flaws. So Sin is another all-around neutral type character. He plays really well in mid-range with big buttons and special moves like Beak Driver and Elk Hunt. Elk Hunt being standout because it's a low profile attack. His damage has been pretty high since season 3, and he starts rounds with guns blazing with full stamina bar, the gauge above his meter. He has follow-ups to these special moves, and they buff them by giving them an advantageous Core Crush that you can use both for strike throw and to just keep control of the situation. And his defense is all around good. His backdash used to be considered not great, but it travels a really big distance and it's very invulnerable. He has a huge DP, and his reward for mashing is pretty good. I think he has a couple of small weaknesses, and they all revolve around his stamina meter. So a big thing is that even though these follow-ups are strong and have great combo ability, they take forever to come back. So you can use your burst to kind of fight this, and he's out of play for a while. He's strongest with about 2 to 3. His jump is also not so great. He's kind of floaty, and he doesn't really have attacks that hit very deep. He does have an air stall and jump D, but it is laughably slow. So he's usually pretty vulnerable when he jumps. Ramlethal is another mid-range neutral pressure type character, and she got a pretty big rework in season 4. So she has massive mid-grade normals like Far Slash, 5H, JS. They're all best in class. She can re-establish herself in neutral, as in season 1, if you blocked something like this or this, it wasn't a huge deal besides the pushback. Between the addition of Wild Assault and her new special move, Ondo, if you choose to just wait, then she'll be able to keep pushing her advantage. Her changes to her swords make them extremely plus on block, and because of this change, she's back to looping mix-ups in positive, breaking the wall if she hits you successfully. I did say her normals were good, but her jump is incredibly strong as well. So we already mentioned JS, but her jump H is now disjointed. She has a stalling move in Aggressor or Dodo, and her flip kick is advantageous. Basically, at all times, this character has giant red danger signs when you're in the mid-range. So as far as weaknesses, honestly, this is another okay HP LOL. Her defense is kind of mid. When she has 50 meters, she does have the lovingly named Motorboat, but her fastest normal is her jab, which is standing. So reversing defensive situations can be pretty tough, especially since many characters want to do pressure here where this does not reach. Finally, a combination of nerfs has made it so she cannot combo her kicks into her launcher, and her sweep has had low range since the game came out, so essentially she can't combo off this anymore outside of very specific situations. And this can be a pain point for the character. So next is Happy Chaos. This is one of the Eternal characters. He is a set play zoning style character, but the way he zones is with this gun that has hit scan properties. So when the reticle is on you, he can shoot it using a resource. It's a combination of 2 resources, the bullets, of which he has 6, and the concentration meter. which initially he does not have a lot, but with a power-up he can fire a lot more times in succession. He can increase the tracking of his projectiles with this curse, which makes him track far faster. He has great kicks, long pokes, and since he doesn't have an H button, he has this gun. Even things that look bad, like far slash and success, as long as they make contact, it's fine. And honestly, he could whiff sometimes, and it's RNG, and sometimes he just hits you, and sometimes he does not. He has some great jumping attacks. Jump H is legitimately one of the best jumping moves in the game. He also has his Jump 2K, which pops up now. And while his JS is not super standout, it is standout in that he can combo from retreating because of the gun. He has consistent conversion ability, and he breaks the wall from pretty much anywhere as long as you route properly. An amazing burst situation. He has a lot going for him, and the character's consistency in tournaments shows this. He has a couple of small weaknesses though, so for starters, he got a pretty meaningful HP nerf. Previously, people said that he had too much HP for the type of character that he is, and he dies faster than before. His movement is also kind of limited, and he doesn't have big buttons, and a lot of these buttons he uses has a good amount of recovery, so he does have problems escaping the corner, despite his consistent conversion ability, especially off jabs. Finally, due to the way his combos work, he actually does build the opponent quite a bit of burst and meter, because his super is a lot of hits, he wall splats because he corners you off everything, so you do have to use your resource wisely against him to make matches kind of annoying and less linear for him. Finally, he just straight up does not have an invul super, which contributes to the defense problem. So Nago is the boss character from arcade mode, and he definitely plays like one. So matches against him tend to go in two phases. So at the beginning of the round, he has access to powerful special moves that cost a gauge above his meter called blood gauge. If he does hit you, then he will try to keep you in the corner using his powerful normals, fishing for hits and stopping your escapes. Now, if he happens to use a bunch of resource and not catch you, then he'll try to use his superior normals to get the resource back. In the case he uses too much, he will activate like this, which depending on the character can lead to major punishes. He has access to a new super. In Season 4, they changed it so that in the case you can combo into this activation somehow, and they usually do it by popping here, then you can continue your combo and actually use this super. It does drain your HP to 1, but it gives his resource back for 1 more mix-up. You can use normals where he slashes you, his command grab, and his super in order to recover his blood gauge. So Nago plays an interesting resource game where he's kind of teetering on the line of am I going to go too far or not, and he can create big payoffs with this. But he has a handful of weaknesses despite all these strengths. So for starters, despite being so overwhelming, he's pretty slow. He can't run unless he uses special moves. He has a slow backdash that's reactable. His jumps are slow too. His normal jump is 5 frames instead of 4, and his super jump has considerable startup. And if you play the right character, you can whiff punish him. The lack of the dash means that he can be bullied in the corner, even though he has really good moves like 5k, 2s, and far slash to fight his way out. Finally, I say he kind of shows his hand when he has this amount of resource, because he can't really do special moves without the threat of going into Blood Rage, so sometimes he can be predictable, especially if you can survive to this point. So the last character to round out this group is Anji. This is one of the characters that truly started from the bottom and now he's here. He is yet another mid-range character, but he's built around conditioning in both neutral and on offense. And in neutral, it's around this move, Suigetsu no Hakobi, so we call this spin. And this move catches any attacks that swing into them. And once you swing into it, you can't really cancel. So he's either able to just straight up punish you, or he could use a follow-up to the move called Mirare to knock you down. In pressure, he has Fusion, a special move with many follow-ups. He has a high, a low, a pulse on block pressure reset, and this hop that he could use for various trickery. He can also choose to just end the pressure and reset, which gives him more meter. Now the thing is, all of these various follow-ups are punishable on block, or can be counter hit. So it's not like this offense is risk-free, but because of delays he can put in his pressure, plus choosing to repeat the situation, he can condition the opponent to sit there, and each time he's correct, he's similar to Chipp in that he builds a little bit of meter. New to this patch is that the overhead is unreactable, but leads to a hard knockdown, but he builds meter. And Charge Fusion now can repeat and has its own set of follow-ups. He has high HP and guts, meaning he'll survive things characters won't. And this usually means that whether or not he's beating you or you're beating him, he will get an opportunity to use 50 meter, and he can use it on many things. He does have a couple of small weaknesses, but overall I think he's really powerful. Primarily in that things that he does have gaps. And he's actually pretty prone to being whip punish, along with a couple of moves having poor frame data. That's pretty much it though, I would say. So we are finally at the last 4 characters. And we have to start with Potemkin. Now this character has been all over the tier list, and I have made a video recently about why people think he's very strong, so if you want a lot of details, you can go watch that video. Potemkin is the trademark grappler of the game, but he has moves to help with grappler weaknesses, like the full screen slide head, or flick for projectiles. Now he got buffed both in the last patch of Season 3, and the first patch of Season 4, but in the first patch of Season 4, he got a ton of changes because they removed a technique that made it so that he can cancel his 6k into special moves that was pretty integral to his more advanced techniques. So in this patch, he just gave it back to him with no real downsides. So now he has things like Armored Potemkin Buster that is moving towards you. While it would take a while to go through all the buffs they gave him between Season 3.2 and Season 4, which again, go check out that video if you feel like it, I go through all of them. The main thing about Potemkin is that he's a character who is a grappler, where his throw has high reward, but he doesn't really give the opponent resource for hitting this, but he can kill many characters in 3 grabs. So grabbing Baiken twice, she's already on guess for game, and she has like less than half her meter, where he almost has 50. But then his strike is also quite rewarding. So like Mei, he has a rewarding strike and throw, but he doesn't have a combo throw. He just has a throw that does a lot of damage. He has the highest HP in the game, so you are definitely giving him 50 meter for beating him, but also he just builds meter for existing. He's always moving forward at you, and he uses a ton of special moves in neutral to build resource. Asuka only has a little bit more HP than Potemkin, but Potemkin doesn't really hurt himself outside of the grappler idea of your HP is a resource, so run into stuff while you try to hit them. Not to mention that when he inevitably does get 50 meter, he has a suite of powerful meter options like Hammerfall into RC or Hammerfall into Gigantor, among others. On top of that, he has Blue Wild Assault, which means he has a plus on block strike throw with Pop Buster for half his burst. So both from situations like this and straight up regular knockdowns, you have to deal with these really strong strike throws. Garda impact as a projectile means you can't really push him off you, and you still have to deal with the guard crush. So he's just always near your face, doing a bunch of risk, threatening you all the time. Now he is a big body, so he does have some traditional weaknesses, like he's not mobile, he has a react to a backdash that's slow, he has slow pokes that could be easy for some character to whip punish, but the resource point plus the additional consistency of hard knockdowns really helped push him to the top. Now Johnny is another rags to riches character. The game describes him as a zoner, and I would think this is reasonably accurate, and this character really started popping off in 3.2. And to be honest, the rationale has not changed. So both his dash and his backdash are unseeable, making him very slippery, and he has huge normals that control a large part of the screen. He can confirm things easily thanks to a previous buff he got on his 5H, making the move bigger. Mistfinder is both bigger and is medium counter hit, meaning he can keep up his offense consistently and also sometimes combo. Since he's good at playing outside of characters' ranges, he's good at naturally building meter. And as another high HP character, he's either getting meter quickly from running his game plan on you, or you're giving him 50 meter for later. Him having 50 meter means he can pop 50/50s whenever he wants, on top of him having powerful meter neutral options. He does not need meter to do 50/50s though, because as long as he can cut this card, he gets a follow-up that is both a combo and a plus on block guard crush. And despite the step dash, he is crazy mobile. His dash jump goes really far. He actually jumps quite high, especially his high jump. He can stall multiple ways with Mistfinder, along with having Mistfinder dash. And as this slows his air momentum, he can delay and anti-anti-air you. If anything, his main issues are that his slash buttons are whip punishable, and he really doesn't like low profile moves. He also can't dash block, so he can have problems fighting his way out the corner. But that's pretty much it. At this point, Goldlewis should be pretty familiar to Guilty Gear players as a top tier in Strive, and he was one of the problem characters in 4.0 that really got people riled up. So for starters, he just hard knockdowned off everything. They nerfed this move so it has more recovery, but the fact that he can control how many bullets he fires makes it a very strong anti-zoning tool. He builds security incredibly fast. He gets to level 2 in about 3 game seconds. And he has a strong suite of defensive normals. A 5k that beats lows, his trademark jump D is surprisingly hard to whip punish to us. Even though his jump is slow, he can try to check you if dash jump into block if they feel like you won't react. He has both this powerful drone move, which basically ends neutral, and forces you to either run at him or have some type of very character specific plan, and it powers up depending on how much security he has, and he's going to get level 3. And if they're feeling feisty, they can spend the security meter and meter on this burn it down super, which also powers up with security. Needless to say, he has a very powerful burst situation. Again, and this is a repeating theme, he does have a lot of HP, so whether or not he's beating you up or you're beating him, he's going to get 50 meter to use against you. His 2P is one of the best anti-airs in the game, and it takes a lot of skill to make him whiff this. He also has plus on block guard crush, which gives him pretty scary strike throw. And in the case you're too scared to do anything, he can do chip damage, and this used to be significantly more. He has various tricky, dirty mix-ups with both drone, where this stays out, he can continue the combo, and he can use meter for various tricky mix-ups. Now, he is vulnerable to getting boxed in the corner. The character is not fast, and he's a big body, so again, he has a slow, reactable-ish backdash. The nature of his jump and not having to double jump makes it so that keeping this position can be pretty stressful for him. Also, while his fastest move is this 2P, which is very fast and plus, it loses both 6Ps and can be low profiled with not that much effort. There are a few things from him that are pretty easy to whip punish too, they're pretty important. But honestly, he doesn't have a major weakness. I said all those amazing things about him, and he still has more stuff that's good. I would just be talking about him for a really long time. I went through every single thing that he had that's good. And last but not least, we have the king, Leo himself. Another all-rounder character. He focuses on mid-range pressure and mix-ups. His main mechanic is his back turn stance, where he has various buttons, but essentially he has the ability to high-low you with a button, with the H button or with his kick. Now, the biggest change that he got in this patch is that he has the ability to dash and attack, which he did not have the ability to do before. Before, he had to do the entire dash and then do it, which meant that what they did in back turn was pretty structured, and there was a lot of RPS and counterplay, but he had answers to everything. With the addition of this, it could be pretty hard to get him off you if you don't have a reversal or some type of specific counterplay. In addition to this, the dash makes it so he has new conversions he did not have previously, enabling corner-to-corner conversions. His defense is classically good since he has a flash kick. All he has to do is tap up if he's holding down back to do a reversal. So Leo does have a weakness though, so he really does not like either good, fast, active kicks or fast, active buttons in general, because two of his primary pokes, his far slash and his 5H, are not disjointed, which means characters can bully him from a distance with fast and active moves. So in order to be successful with Leo, you need to be able to work around this. So let's touch on the balance of the game for a moment before we wrap up this video. So I mentioned, I believe, this was a very long recording, that I am pretty happy with the game's balance at the moment. And it's not because of the best characters. I'm not really happy with why the top tiers are good. They're all good because they have high HP and they either get resource and shit on you, or you hit them a bunch and then they get resource and shit on you. It takes a lot to kind of get over that. I think the thing I'm happiest with is the top 8 group. There's a lot of characters that can get really far, and they have both fun playstyles, interesting playstyles, rewarding playstyles, but also meaningful weaknesses that the player playing them has to play around and the player playing against them can use to try to fight back. I think the reason why people think the power level is too high is just that there's so many characters that can solo win tournaments. Between the Elite Four and the winning characters, there are 11 characters, and that's a ton of characters that can win solo. So I think lowering the ceiling is probably the way to go a little bit, rather than raising other characters. I do think the other reason why people are frustrated with the high character power does come from the high HP characters getting meter for getting hit. This has been a long-running problem in the game. I believe people were starting to talk about this in Season 2. Leo, Goldlewis, Johnny, Pot, Nago, and Anji all have high HP. Sin, Sol, and Mei are kind of like middle-ish of the pack, but still a good amount of health. So these characters having such good all-around tools, plus always having resource even when you're doing things well against them, can be very frustrating. How do they fix this? I don't really know. Something like a modifier, like the more HP you have, the less meter you gain when you get hit. Something like that would probably be helpful. Will they do this? I don't know. And finally, I think someone watching this, a fighting game player, a casual fan maybe, you'll see board tier lists like this. Maybe not like ranked this way as like, oh, I'm thinking about like these big events and I'm not using letters. I'm using how far I think they can go. But just that the bottom of a game keeps getting pulled up. And I think this is mainly happening in mainstream fighting games because they're all legacy titles like Guilty Gear, like Tekken, like Street Fighter, or IP fighters like Dragon Ball FighterZ, Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising, or in the future, 2XKO. People not feeling like they can't play their favorite character is always going to feel bad, and I've already started seeing the floor of games going up since Dragon Ball, so I expect to see this more in the future. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. This one was a doozy. After the character impressions, I basically just sat on this for a few months thinking and just playing the game a lot. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you want to support the channel, I highly recommend you go to my Patreon. I don't know if recommend is the right word, but I post what's going on with content. I try to post things early there where I can, and I want to do more there as I have more time. We stream most days on Twitch at twitch.tv/LordKnight, which is where we also record content for the second channel, which I'm finally getting back together, LordKnight Chronicles. And if you're interested in fighting game coaching or Guilty Gear coaching specifically, you can find me on Metafy at metafy.gg/@LordKnight. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.